Today we're going to visit the East Broad Top Railroad, arguably the most significant preserved industrial site in the U.S., located in the bowels of the coal-laden Appalachian Mountains and steeped in the roots of momentous historic preservation. Join us as we take a close look at why this place is so fascinating and unique. Hi, I'm Eric. For my 50th birthday, my wife is sending me on a 2-week adventure to see as many steam locomotives as I can. But I'm not taking this trip alone. I'll be joined by my son Carson and our good friend Chris. Now, Chris and I have both worked in the tourist railroad industry for many years. So along the way, we're going to catch up with some old friends and meet some new ones. We're going to get some special behind-the-scenes access into things that most people don't normally see, and also offer insight into the complicated machinery of steam locomotives and the world of tourist railroading. So join us on this epic adventure where each day brings a new discovery. Day 2 of the Epic Steam Adventure. How's that sound? Epic Steam great. Adventure? All right. So yeah, Carson back there, wave. Hi. Chris. All right. And we're going to the East Broad Top, the narrow gauge icon of the East. Very historic. So we're pretty darn excited. This has been on my list of places I want to go for a long time, and it's an up and coming operation. They've been changing, they've been growing, it's under new management, and everybody's pretty excited about this place, and I am too. So we're gonna go check this out. The East Broad Top is a veritable time capsule. Construction of the 3-foot gauge railroad began in 1872 to bring coal and iron ore to the town of Rock Hill Furnace, then shipping the pig iron out to a connection with the Pennsylvania Railroad in the town of Mount Union. Soon the demand for pig iron ran out, but the demand for coal increased, so the railroad focused its attention on coal exports. Of course, they also hauled passengers and general merchandise freight to support the communities they served. Business was good for many years, and the railroad built a significant shop complex in Rock Hill Furnace, plus upgraded their fleet of equipment to all-steel hopper cars and some of the largest narrow-gauge steam locomotives ever built for domestic use. However, by 1956, coal demand had dropped significantly, and the railroad decided to close its doors forever. It's like the last person to leave turned out the lights, locked the door, and never looked back. Everything was left exactly how it was, and that's what makes this place so unique.
So you could walk into the shop and you could see tools that have been laying on the same workbench since 1955. I mean, they didn't get rid of a thing. There's still like original blueprints. Like I said, there's superheater units that have still been capped, never put in a locomotive. It's wild. New old stock parts. It's unbelievable. It is literally a time capsule of what short line railroading was like in the, from the teens to the 50s or whatever.
The railroad was sold for scrap to the Kovalchuk family, but instead of scrapping the line, they decided to reopen the railroad as a tourist operation. From 1960 through 2011, trains ran through the summer months about 5 miles one way to a Y in a picnic area called Colgate Grove. In 2011, the tourist operation was shut down for good, until in 2020 it was announced that everything was being sold to a new nonprofit, the EBT Foundation. Passenger services were restored on a limited basis in 2022. 4 brand new passenger cars were delivered, and locomotive number 16 was restored to operation in 2023. Now, steam-powered passenger trains are running 5 days a week for hour-long excursions departing 3 times a day. Guided shop tours are available as well. Alright, so it's just after 9 a.m. and we've just arrived at the East Broad Top. We're looking for Dave Domitrovich, who's the master mechanic for the East Broad Top, and he's also today's engineer. So they're getting the 16 fired up outside the roundhouse this morning, and so we're going to go look for Dave.
What's up, man?
Not much. Good to see you.
Yeah, Antarctica.
Very dirty.
Dave and Chris have known each other for years, so they're really looking forward to seeing each other again. After Dave goes in and checks the 16 for a minute, he's going to show us around the roundhouse, and this is going to be pretty cool.
This was full of garbage 6 months ago. This was the bus company
garage when they owned the transportation company as well. So the B&O Museum had all these test benches.
Okay.
And we worked a deal to get that. It wasn't part of the museum's collection, so it wasn't like, you know, insane to get rid of it. So we basically bought them tools and they gave us the benches.
So having these old air brake test racks is actually a pretty good thing for the EBT. These are pretty amazing pieces of equipment. When you're running antique locomotives and passenger cars that have old style brake valves, it's hard to find places in order to do maintenance on these things. So by having their own test racks, they're able to do their own maintenance on their air brake valves and then also make a little extra money by contracting out to do air brake work for other historic or tourist railroad operations. So these are pretty special. And they've also got a pretty nice machine shop set over here too, with some lathes and mills and things that they can use in order to help them make some parts. And these are more modern machines that are easier to use than the old belt-driven things, which we're going to take a look later in the old historic machine shop. But this is much more practical for modern operations. So next door to the bus garage is the original 8-stall EBT roundhouse. This is historic, original roundhouse where they store their original historic steam locomotives and also their motor car, their M1 motor car. The 8th stall of the roundhouse has been modernized for current restoration operations, but the rest of this is very much authentic. And Dave's basically going to show us around a little bit and then kind of give us free range to take a look. So we're going to explore this fascinating place.
The M1, we put a new roof on it last year, and then the trucks are going to come out this winter. The trucks haven't been out of it since like '58.
Wow.
So we're going to do a bunch of truck work to it and paint it. It'll go back to, it's close to like old Pullman green it should be.
Okay.
So that's what it'll be, and the windows will all go back to being green and everything. That was a tourist architect.
What is that roof material?
Linen.
You're kidding.
It's linen?
Yeah.
And then coat it with a sealant, a roof coating of some sort?
Yeah, well, we actually used linseed oil paint like what should have been used.
Linseed oil and paint. Okay. Interesting.
And then I put the 12 and the 18 next to each other so everybody can see the difference.
Oh yeah, look at the difference in size, right?
I forgot how damn big these things are.
Yeah, 16, 17, 18 are the largest standard configuration narrow gauge engines ever built. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just a big ass engine.
Yeah.
I had this out for Pete's shoot, and that would be the last time I ever take it out. It has so much lateral issues. I put it on the ground again. I'm just like, no. It can go on the turntable. That's it. There must be like 4 inches of lateral in the number 3.
Dear God.
These have blind drivers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
2
Two and three are both blind?
Yeah. But the 16, 17, 18 are supposedly the same, but they're not. Like the 18 is much bigger as far as like height and everything. Running boards are taller, the cab's higher. The more I worked on the 16, it's closer to the 15 than it is the 17 or 18.
Okay.
I mean, eyeball is prints, they're the same, but they're not.
So this is what's southern valve gear?
Correct. Yeah, the 16, 17, 18 have southern valve gear.
It looks like washers just turned 90 degrees.
On in. That's
Yeah.
all it is.
And power reverse.
Correct.
None of the K engines on the Rio Grande have power reverse, do they? They're all Johnson bars.
I thought.
No, yeah, no, they don't have power reverse. But I assume the 12 does not. The 12 is probably.
12 has Johnson bar.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that 18, that is a sizable engine for a narrow gauge. I mean, that's pretty hefty.
Yeah, I mean, the like I said, the boiler and all the configuration and everything is exactly the same, the 16, 17, 18. But you can tell they were learning and changing stuff as they went. Like the injectors are higher, the piping's higher. You know, they were probably sick of ripping everything off of them all the time. You look at the 16s, like tender strainers, they're only like 6 inches off the ground. But I kept everything the way it was to.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah, it's all part of the history of the evolution. the nozzle standard, the same kind of nozzle that's in all of them?
Yeah, yeah. Everything here is pretty much standardized. It was weird.
Yeah, there's nothing fancy about that. That's just a very straightforward.
No, there's nothing fancy about it. But the engine got a bark to it. It has a unique.
Probably does.
There's no arch in them.
Really?
There's no overfire tubes.
Huh.
You know. And the engine, they don't like going backwards. If you read about Southern valve gear, you can set it to go one way or the other, but not both. So it's super square going forwards, and backwards it's kind of like whoa, whoa, whoa. And
Just nothing.
there's nothing you can do about it.
Do you have a Y up at the end, or you have to back up the whole way?
Yeah, we got a Y.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what's nice here. The broadtop had a Y everywhere where the turntable here. They never ran backwards.
Well, narrow gauge, you can get away with, put Ys in tighter spaces than you can on a standard gauge.
The firebox, you can't lean your hand up against anything, and you can't sit down. You just for hours just doing this.
Well, as a
Fireman, you wouldn't be sitting there.
yeah, you're shoveling coal, so
But then how would you control the water if you're shoveling coal?
well, you just have to do both, but you're going back and forth. Yeah, you only have to one water glass, and you have what's called tricocks.
Oh.
Okay, so look on the engineer side probably, and then look for like 3 valves that are kind of in a row, that are a couple inches apart on the engineer side. So you open up that valve a little bit, and you see if you get steam or water out. If you get water out, you know your water level is above that valve. If you get steam out, you know the water level is below that valve.
So you kind of have to eyeball it.
Yeah, and yes, you do, and you have to check them regularly. So you open up the first one, the bottom one, like you get water out, okay, well now you got water above that point, you're all right. Then you go to the next one, and you try that one. If you get water out, then now you got more water than that. If you got less water than that, if you get steam, then your water might be a little bit on the low side, depending on where you're at on the railroad. Maybe you want it a little bit low, but that's how you know where your water level is.
Yeah.
So it's time to get the steam locomotive coupled up to the train and get it ready to go for the 11 o'clock departure. And Dave has graciously invited us to ride with them in the cab as they do their switching and maneuver through the yard. And we're pretty excited. Let's go take a ride.
And I know it's sacrilegious, but we have a non-EBT whistle on right now. So. It's off the last Genesee and Wyoming steam engine that existed, Genesee and Wyoming 17.
I'm sorry.
Oh, good. Okay with you.
Is that the cooling tower?
Yep.
Most of the mainline switches were stubbed at 1.2.
You're kidding.
Can you imagine going through them at like 30 miles per hour?
Did they eventually switch them over, or what's?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Any of the ones that are points were points in the competition.
Oh, okay.
So this is a superheated engine? Mm-hmm. So how much water do you guys go through in a day?
About 1,000 gallons a trip we go through.
All right, okay. 10 miles, like round
Yeah,
trip?
it's like 9.5 or something
Okay,
like
that follows. The fireman is doing what's known as a blowdown. He's opening up a valve at the bottom of the boiler at the mud ring and releasing water and steam out to atmosphere, which is flushing all the sediment out that builds up in the bottom of the boiler.
Yeah. Did you grab my keys? Oh yeah.
I'll go up off this side.
Okay. Like the one thing I changed on the boiler is the flexis on the outside row. All these engines were prone to crack bolt to bolt.
Okay.
And even the 16 They never ran it, obviously, since '56, but when I cut the bolts out, every single one was starting to crack. It's just too big of an area for what they had, you know, for a rigid stay to be there. So it was funny. We actually found brand new in Cosmoline the UW sleeve tool, put it in air motor, and actually, you know, it reams it to the right size and cuts the seat and everything. I never seen one. I only seen them in books.
It's kind of stuff I'm telling you. They find everything they need. I was telling them about finding the superheater units that are still capped, never put in a locomotive. I mean,
well, that was the thing. Like, supposedly we never had any boiler tools here, like in the forest. You know, there was no taps, no air motor. I have like 10 times the amount of stuff. You just had to find it somewhere and put it somewhere. Have a spot. Have a home, you know.
Now that the train has been assembled, it's pulling into the depot for loading passengers. There's going to be 3 trains today. One at 11 o'clock, one at 1 o'clock, and one at 3 o'clock. There's also 3 shop tours at 11 o'clock, 1 o'clock, and 3 o'clock. We've elected to chase the 11 o'clock train, take the shop tour at 1 o'clock, and ride the 3 o'clock train. So the train has arrived back in Rock Hill Furnace, turned on the Y, and is pulling into the depot. So my friend Jonathan Smith, who's Director of Sales and Marketing for East Broad Top, has decided to come in on his day off to meet with us. So he's going to show us around the back areas of the depot, areas that most people don't get to see on the regular tours. So we're really looking forward to this. Now, a little side note, I told Jonathan that we were coming, but I didn't tell him that we were filming a video and that he was going to be on camera. So he feels bad that he was not dressed in appropriate company attire.
Gosh, I wish I was wearing my polo at the very least.
I know, looking more official. That's what you get for coming in on your day off.
I know, that's what I get on the railroad it was. So that was the train master's office here. This was the station agent's office. And then the building was built around a 2-story high brick and cement vault that houses all of the company documents, records, drawings, maps, locomotive drawings, anything you can think of. So come on in.
Oh, wow.
Goodness.
Kind of like a
Yeah.
Indiana
So this
Jones.
is the downstairs vault.
Cole Waybill's 1931.
Yeah. You really never know what you're going to find in here. Downstairs tends to be, so most of this stuff actually came from Philadelphia. The company offices were actually in Philly, but when those offices closed, they shipped almost everything over here. So somewhere in here is the first ever Board of Directors minutes book from 1872, all the way to when the railroad closed in 1956, and everything in between. You've got payroll ledgers, cash books, you've got expense reports, vouchers, everything.
Disposable cameras.
Yes, and then there's tourist era knickknacks too. We've got a whole bunch of tickets from the tourist era, signs. Obviously, we've got all the whistles for all the engines. We've got, you know, lamps and hoses and
Checked by Lynn.
Yes,
Oh, the
Lynn
whistles.
Moedinger.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Whistles and lamps.
Yep.
Oh, cool.
Yep. Yeah, so the locomotive drawings are down here, and Lynn's been going through everything and helping the archive. So we do have an archivist who's sorting through everything with her staff. So
Okay.
they come in and Railroad absorbed the Rock Hill Iron and Coal Company when the iron furnace closed, and it became the East Broad Top Railroad and Coal Company. So they ran all the coal fields up in Robertsdale, so all the mines and everything.
Oh.
And when those offices closed, they also brought all the mining drawings here, so all the maps and valuations and stuff. So everything is here. They never threw anything away, thank God. So we have...
Was the railroad around in 1999? What's the box at the very top of the coal unit?
Oh yeah, so there's a mix of common carrier era, which is 1856 till 1956. That's the common carrier era. The railroad was chartered in 1856 and then ran as a freight railroad all the way till 1956. And then there's the tourist era, which is where the Kowalczyks purchased it from 1956 until we bought it in 2020. And now we call this the Foundation era.
Okay.
It's the third era of the railroad. So there's a little bit of everything in here. Foundation era stuff is mostly digital, which we're actually talking about how do we preserve that stuff too, because
absolutely.
right, how do you preserve the emails that helped form the foundation? How do you preserve all the correspondence? Of course we have our board minutes, but there's far more than that.
Put it
right,
in the USB drives.
there's a whole lot of stuff, loads of it.
You said 1908? Is that a press?
1906, yeah, this is the yeah, it's a book press, so they would bind all the papers in together. This is where our cafe was last year, but we're looking for a new vendor right now. But this was the baggage room.
Oh, this way you said you had a restaurant or cafe?
For the past 2 years, we've had a cafe in here. You can see where the counters were on the floor. We themed it after the Pioneer Trail route, the EBT Transit Company. So in the 20s and 30s, the railroad ran a bus company to help retain passengers from the highway system. So you actually could connect from Altoona to Hagerstown via EBT Transit Company buses. They had a fleet of like 6 buses or something, and it eventually incorporated into Greyhound. But yeah, it's pretty cool.
Is this?
Watch your step. It's one of the steepest stairways you'll ever see. And it's because the bottom stairs, the bottom floor is 17 feet. The upstairs is 14 feet. Yeah.
Why do you think 17 feet?
I don't know. I genuinely believe it's because they wanted the building to be imposing. They put the caution no solicitors sign at the very top of the imposing staircase. So you have to to get all the way to the top.
Then find out that you're not welcome.
Yeah, exactly.
The extra wide door just to get the big desk in.
Oh yeah, well, we joke that they built the building around these desks because there's genuinely no way I can think of. Otherwise, they came in the windows. But
so this is all original furniture?
Yes. So we use it now for our modern offices. So that's why you see, all binders and ledgers everywhere. But yes, the roll top desks, most of the chairs, to be honest. The walls, the filing cabinets, everything is about pretty much stopped evolving in the 40s. So, yeah, we've got
even the filing cabinets.
Yeah, most of them are. I mean, there's some modern ones that are around, but even the file cabinets are historic. So this was the dispatcher's office. That's Brad's general manager office right now. But you can see the original switchboard on his desk for the phone system.
Oh, cool.
And then this is my office, but this is the freight manager's office. So behind my desk, you can't see it because it's blocked. This is the president's office. So he had the best view of the whole place. And
oh yeah, so you're looking right out the yard and everything.
Yeah, with the bay window looking out over the yard.
Sorry. And he's got the press tins.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Oh
and
yeah.
The beautiful fireplace behind the
that's cool.
behind the way. And when we say there are documents everywhere, we mean it. There are just maps.
So they literally just paint the picture on the lights.
Pretty much. Yep. There's a little bit of everything everywhere. So yeah. This, for example, is a proposed map, a proposed extension of the railroad from Robertsdale to Broad Top City to connect with the standard gauge Huntington and Broad Top. The railroad, the Huntington and Broad Top and the East Broad Top came within, I think, about 2 miles of each other, but because of the topography, never actually connected. And this was a proposed connection.
Way to do it.
Yeah, it was never built, but.
These grooves in the windowsill of an upstairs office are where they had a drying rack outside the window for drying blueprints. So they would make the blueprints on the inside and then put them on a rack and set them outside the window to dry. Just, oh man.
Yeah.
Archived everything, isn't it?
Yep.
Wow.
Somewhere in here is a ton of mine drawings, but Julie Rockwell, who is our archivist, she estimates that there's over 5,000 linear feet of documents. So if you were to take every piece of paper and just line it up end by end, it'd be nearly a mile long. And so this is where they have a wide format scanner for maps and other things like that. They've got the book scanner and the Epson scanner over there for ledgers and other things, and they're just constantly growing.
For our train ride, Carson really wants to ride in the caboose, which would probably not be my first choice. I'd probably prefer an open air car. But here we go. Let's go check it out. After about 20 minutes, we've reached the end of the line. This is about 5 miles up the track to a place called Colgate Grove, where there's a Y. And future plans is to have a picnic area here and let people off in order to enjoy the picnic area, special events and things like that, and then let them take a train back to Rock Hill Furnace. Just arrived back in Rock Hill Furnace, and we've got to turn the train on the Y before we can pull into the depot to deboard. So actually, adjacent to the EBT facility in Rock Hill Furnace in the neighboring town of Orbisonia is the Shade Gap Electric Railway, which runs electric trolleys on what was the Shade Gap branch of the East Broadtop. Now, I got nothing against trolleys. In fact, a lot of people consider trolleys honorary steam engines because a lot of times the electricity comes from steam power plants somewhere else, just transmitted through electric lines in order to run the trolleys. But we were here to look at steam locomotives. And we kind of decided that if we had time after we saw everything we wanted to see at the East Broadtop, if we could still had time in order to see the trolleys, we would go see the trolleys. But unfortunately, we ran out of time and couldn't do both. However, on the drive out to our next destination, we paralleled the Shade Gap Electric Railway, and it kind of ran up a canyon along a creek and looked actually very scenic and looked like a really nice ride. So definitely something on my list in order to do next time.
Why is this railroad worth saving? You can ride a train a lot of places, thank God. There are tons of places around the country where you can go and take a train ride over using historic equipment, over a historic railroad, and that's really great. And there seem to be more and more popping up, which is really cool. But there are very few places left where you can see the entire railroad in the context of why it was here, what it did, everything is here completely uninterrupted. The town looks as though it did back in the 1940s, 1950s, with very little change. Right?
I've expected the town has more life to it than I would have expected for a town where that basically the business, everything shut down in 1950.
Yeah, coal left in 1956 and nothing took its place.
But the town still exists and is not done bad. Right.
Unfortunately, most folks in this town, when coal left, they had to look for work elsewhere. So these are, I forget what the exact term is for it, but they sleep here and work elsewhere, right?
Bedroom community.
Yeah, bedroom community, thank you. There are some places where historic structures in the town disappeared in the 60s, 70s. There's a beautiful grocery store that's gone now. It's basically a parking lot. There's some gas stations where there was a school, things like that. But otherwise, the homes right here in the company town of Rock Hill Furnace haven't changed. If you were to get rid of every car in the parking lot, you'd have no clue what year it was in a lot of ways. And I think that's the reason why this particular railroad is so fascinating to people. It's why it has this sort of mystical aura about it, and that is that when you go stand over in the shops, there is nothing to tell you it's 2023. It's 1923.
I know, that's what's amazing,
right?
Isn't it?
Yeah, and you know, you go to other heritage railroads, and we've had to do the same. In historic preservation, you try to find the line, right? We want to operate this stuff. We want to see it move. We want to open to the public. So there are some things we have to do to make that possible. But there are other things that we are perfectly okay leaving alone, right? And just leaving it as was. So when you go on your public tour today, you're going to go through stalls 1 through 3. We don't really take the public beyond that because those are, we consider it work zones where they're actually doing restoration, where the stall where 16 sits overnight, And I don't have to describe to you the dangers of the public walking around an area where there's work happening.
That's why we don't do public tours in our shop.
Exactly.
Yes.
So we've had to take our historic roundhouse and we've had to say, this is for tours, this is for work. But the fascinating thing, even here, is that even what we've set aside for work to make the modern tourist railroad run, we had to do very little to it. We did very little to it to make it that way. Stall 8, we poured concrete floor in, put fire protection up on the walls so that when they're grinding and cutting, they don't burn the building down, stuff like that, right?
Right.
But otherwise,
you don't want a fire like Durango had. What was it, 20 years ago?
Exactly.
25 years ago.
So, but we argue about even the silliest things here sometimes because we're trying to keep that line very defined. This is a historic property that we are making use of as a tourist railroad. People ask me all the times on the shop tours, will you use this machine shop for restoration or for your locomotives? No. Probably not. There will be some machines, yes, that like the wheel lathe, that would be a shame not to because it's sitting there, and why wouldn't you? But otherwise, we see more value in that shop complex as a historic site, as a representation of America's industrial past, rather than use it and wear it down as a modern machine shop. So that's to me why this railroad's worth saving, is that it's all here, never left, all in its context.
And bringing it back is growing the economic base of the community
so
and
we
development as well.
Along with preserving and protecting the railroad, which are the obvious things that you don't have to explain, we want to preserve the railroad, we want to restore it, we want to protect it for future generations. That's easy enough, right? But along with that comes creating economic opportunity in a county, in a town, in a region where there's been very little economic opportunity since the industry left. And so even on our slowest days, the people who drive 2-3 hours to get here, they have to get gas, they have to eat somewhere, and most of the time they choose to stay the night, they choose to eat, and that trickle down. And that's just the tourism side. That's not even bringing into the discussion the fact that this has been a construction site for 3 years. And we have been trying to source locally, use local contractors. We've been trying to do whatever we can. The hardware store up at the stoplight up there is a revolving door of EBT employees, especially during Christmas, for example. I'm the marketing guy. I don't go to the hardware store very often, except during Christmas when I'm decorating the whole property. So you have the mechanical guys going to the hardware store, I'm going in the hardware store, and I swear we just never leave the hardware store. We've invested, you know, over millions of dollars into the railroad, the community, and at the heart of it, that's the impact that lasts a lot longer than just a train ride, right? You know, all the normal stuff that heritage railroads do for communities, for some reason here, it just feels that much more important because it was missing for 9 years, right? And even before then, they were making do.
Yes.
Now
it's actually growing into something more and growing every day.
This year, it feels like we have our feet under us. We've dug our teeth in, and you know, as long as people keep coming to ride the trains, we're going to keep growing and expanding. We dug track out of the ground. We brought a steam engine back. We purchased 4 brand new train cars and had them built and delivered in a year, which is just insane.
Yeah, those were Washington. Carson was asking about those.
Bellingham, Washington.
Yeah.
Hamilton Manufacturing. We stabilized at least 2 buildings off the top of my head, the carpenter shop and the storehouse, but there's far more work that's gone into the car shop. Actually, I guess we can add that big one. The car shop is nearly done too. Brought all these buildings out of the ground, right? And that's just step 1. Now we have people. The doors are open 5 days a week. That's all we wanted.
So this brings us to the part of the program where we talk about how many steam locomotives we saw today. And while we do that, we're going to run down the EBT steam locomotive roster. And of course, all of EBT's steam locomotives are 282 Mikados built by the Baldwin Locomotive Works. Number 12 was built in 1911, and it's the smallest steam locomotive on the roster. It's also nicknamed Millie, named after Nick Kovalchik's daughter. Now there's no number 13 on the roster, so the next locomotive we see is number 14, built in 1912. We found it hiding in the back of the machine shop. Now number 14 is a little bit bigger than the number 12, and 15 is the same as 14, just built 2 years later. Now the largest size of locomotives on the EBT are 16, 17, and 18. 16 was built in 1916. 17 was built in 1918. And the 18 was built in 1920. So today we saw a total of 6 steam locomotives, which brings our total for the trip after 2 days of 9 steam locomotives that we've encountered. So we've got a pretty good drive ahead of us tonight to meet our next destination for tomorrow, Steamtown National Historic Site in Scranton, Pennsylvania. This has been on my list for a long time. I can't wait. Hope to see you there.